Good evening. It's day 95 of the national emergency, and it's day 23 since the country's collective expression of civil unrest. And today, June 16th, is also National Youth Day in South Africa, commemorating the Soweto uprising in 1976. And today is also Gus's birthday. Happy birthday, young man. Gus is one of our favorite comedians. You remember him well. And also, as we saw in the beginning, yesterday, the Supreme Court handed down a wonderful decision protecting the civil rights of the LGBTQ community. Now, we ran a picture of a flag. I want to pull that flag up. Now, this flag is the Pride flag progressive variation reboot by Daniel Quasar. Very interesting. Now, as it says, the colors on the flag, the LGBT6 full-sized color stripes, you can see right there, representing life, red, healing, orange, sunlight, yellow, nature, green, harmony, peace, blue, and spirit is the purple and the ultraviolet. Now, the 5 half size coming on the angle represent the trans identity, the light blue and the light pink and the white. And the marginalized POC communities, people of color, brown and black, as well as those living with AIDS and the stigma and those no longer living as well. Very interesting culture. We were going to run this song last week, but I thought we kind of ran out of time last week. We had such a great show on Thursday, but tonight I really wanted to run Lea Morris's Woyaya again one more time.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know we will. We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know we're there. We will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going. We know we're there. We will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going. We'll know we're there. Woyaya, 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 we'll know we're there.
That song is more beautiful every single time I hear it. Thank you, Leah. Terrific. So, as we mentioned at the top of the show, today is National Youth Day in South Africa, commemorating, well, you know what? I'm bringing out Michael Proctor. He and I are going to have a bit of a conversation. It's been a lot of learning for me and a lot of processing because of what our country's going through right now. Now, Michael and I know each other. The kids went to school together. We spent many soccer game cheering on the side, but also we were more bonded together when I think it was Tim's idea or maybe Daryl's idea that all the dads go out to dinner more times than we probably should have. So Michael and I guess it's safe to say we've eaten a lot of dinners together. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. There we are. Good evening, Michael.
Hello there, Scott. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How about yourself?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, good. You look great.
Thank you. So do you.
So, today, National Youth Day. Tell me a little bit about the background.
So South Africa obviously has a very long and tortuous and somewhat tortured history. But we were talking about some of the instances where pretty significant change can happen after one event. And Soweto 1976 on June the 16th is one of those events. And it pretty much started as a demonstration of school children against having to learn various subjects in Afrikaans. And for those who don't know, there were primarily two languages that the government recognized as primary languages. They were English and Afrikaans, and then there were a wide variety, up to about 13 African languages that a lot of the black population spoke. And they decreed in 1975, as it happens, that Afrikaans would be used for education for certain subjects. And that just made education even more difficult for black African children. And they started demonstrating a couple of days prior to June the 16th. And on June the 16th, it went out of control. The police shot into the crowds. There was a classic and gut-wrenching picture of a young child being carried away from the violence to a hospital where he died. And that picture went all around the world and caused national and international condemnation of the government. And I think it just put a face on what so many black South Africans had been experiencing in much the same way as I think people saw in the George Floyd incident and so many others. But it just makes it so real. You cannot ignore it. You cannot excuse it. You can't explain it away. And it was a pivotal change.
Yeah, and so this was a change from existing law, right?
Well, no laws changed immediately after 1976. There really wasn't any marked change in the way people were ruled or the laws that they were. In fact, some of them could have become more stringent. Stephen Biko and others who died after 1976.
Hmm.
But I think the pressure and international isolation and the growth of the community resistance in South Africa grew exponentially after 1976.
And that you're attributing, or you're mentioning, had a lot to do with that photograph getting out, because that photograph getting out was no easy feat.
No, it wasn't. It was taken by a black photographer for a black newspaper. And a lot of the reports have stories about the photographer and how this changed his life, in some ways for the worst, in some ways for the better.
Hmm.
But, a very difficult picture to have taken.
Yeah, and so I put in the links in the credits for the show tonight. Time 100 most influential photographs, and it deals with that photographs. And yeah, not only were lives, all the people in that photograph, their lives were completely changed. But the museums in South Africa and everywhere around the world really credit that moment that he captured as being a conduit for change, for sure. And what was it like, just a little backstory, to be in South Africa there, where being apart, being separate, was the rule?
It's interesting because although there was so many laws to keep people of different races apart, you had residential segregation that was legislated and codified, public transportation and public parks and restaurants and movie theaters, etc., were very separate. There was still this strange dichotomy or contradiction in a way that probably every white household knew one or more black South Africans.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of black South Africans were employed in a domestic capacity or as gardeners, people who slowly worked into the workforce, and so a lot of people would have said, the person who works in our house isn't like all other black South Africans, and so there was this mental split in a way of people saying, yes, these are individuals, and I'll really help them out, and I'll pay for their schools, their education or their children's education or something. But as for the rest of the black South Africans, they can't vote, they can't live next door to me. It would be terrible if that was to happen.
So there was a dissonance. It didn't feel on a human level just normal. You had to do some tricks in your mind.
No. And
so there was not only kind of a disassociation from just a human feeling, but there was also outside media or ideas that, there was a danger out there.
Yes. And so South Africa was very tightly controlled from a media point of view. We only got television in the country when I was in my final year of high school. Most of the radio was controlled by the state. There were very few English language newspapers that were really liberal. The Lorraine Daily Mail, the Star to some degree, became increasingly so. The Lorraine Daily Mail probably more than any of them. And so, it was very interesting, I think, the way the news and everything came out in that sense, and how people were able to share and experience things in a collective kind of way. Very different to here right now.
So it is. The state needs control. It needs the force to keep humans apart like that.
Yeah. And it was apart, but sharing the collective space, right? You could see black people a lot, but you never really interacted in a public way, in a way that you would be considered equals. Not ever.
And were there black newspapers that were telling their stories? How did that work?
Yes, there were. But I mean, the government still censored a lot. There was censorship. You had to submit all your text prior to printing to the government for approval, really. Crazy laws. You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. And so eventually things did change, but it was quite some time. I mean, the Soweto uprising being in 1976, and then Nelson Mandela was freed in 1990.
Correct.
So
Yeah, it took a
that's a
long time.
long time. Yeah.
Yeah. There were some very entrenched, very well-established structures, and the political party that ran the country at the time, the National Party, certainly they had all the levers that they needed for a very long time to manage things. But I think just the collective pressure, both internally and outside of the country, the international isolation, oil embargoes, and things like that, really caused a lot of problems. A lot of countries wouldn't allow South African passport holders into the country, things like that. So it got to be a very sanctioned environment.
Mm-hmm. And that's an interesting aspect, talking about parallels to what this country is going through right now. I think the United States has always been the country that other people look to for guidance in things like this. All men are created equal.
Indeed. I think that's one of the biggest differences as well, is the American history. I mean, walking around the mall in Washington, reading the memorials, the words that are spoken are so powerful, and what so many leaders have said and that has been recorded is so powerful. It was so different to what we grew up with. There wasn't that foundation of a basis on which you could argue equality. The foundation, the law, the legislature, everything was founded on inequality, and it was accepted as that is the way it was meant to be.
And it had, this inequality, this systemic racism has been going on in this country. It's how the country was started for our whole time. But people are saying now they're feeling like things are definitely changing. The governor was on today talking about changes in police reform across the state. But also we're feeling it in the protests. We're feeling it, or it's being announced in the workspace, in the commercial space. Have you felt any of that resonance, like in the workspace?
Yes, I have. So I work for a large corporation, and in the past, when there've been like 9/11 and events that were really traumatic, they offered support, they offered help that you could get maybe in some sort of way through the organization. This has been different. This has been outright full-on discussions, inviting Black colleagues to talk about their experiences. Emotions that you would not normally associate it with a workspace have been coming to the fore. I mean, video conferences with literally hundreds and hundreds of people on them, and people telling their story, others who are listening clearly very emotional about it. And I think one of the more powerful things is these are colleagues that you see on a regular basis. You know the names of the people who are speaking. You know who they are and where they work. And I've not seen anything quite as overt and as clear from management and leadership as we have recently.
That's good, because I think one of the aspects of this is, once you open yourself up to a person and you hear their story, you can't unhear it.
Yeah.
So you either then have to make a conscious decision to participate in their life and make corrections within yourself, or you have to decide that you're not going to do that.
Yeah, totally. I think it brings you to that choice, because you can't ignore it and you can't just explain it or excuse it away. You have to make a choice. Right.
But as you know, so just one more question. I know we've been going on. It's a great conversation. That idea of making a conscious decision at some point, but I think you were here in the States when apartheid fell in South Africa. But did you have a sense of what it felt like within the community to see that those changes were coming?
Yeah, actually, as it happens, we went back in 1990, which was kind of interesting. So we returned to the country, Carol and I, before Sean and Jacqueline were born. And so we were there. We were able to vote in the first election that included people of all races voting.
Wow.
And there was a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of real angst amongst the population. But very fortunately, people from all persuasions, I think, waited to ride it out to see where it would go. You know, there were no mass arrests, no mass violence. There was no instance of anybody, you know, stealing whole swaths of property or anything else like that. There was none of the fears that people had in the past came to fruition, which was great. It was a very joyous.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing. I think, you know, part of this whole systemic racism is based on this idea that we all have a certain amount of fear. You know, we live in a certain amount of fear that the status quo must be maintained. You know, and as you're saying, like I heard you loud and clear, angst, fear, you know, when things change in a society, when a change that huge happens, I can see that everyone would be scared. But I think, you know, that's why we have to begin to take the responsibility ourselves in order to prepare ourselves for that change, to allow it to happen and not to be afraid and just veer off course and go to the status quo.
And if I may add one thing that's a crucial ingredient to that, and that is really good leadership. We had Nelson Mandela. I mean, you could not get better. You know what I mean? Shall we sit
oh, you had to dash my hopes.
I think you're going to have to wait a little while for some really good leadership.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I'm glad that you said that, because again, we have to take, you know, all of us have to take responsibility, and so if that is a key ingredient, then we, the people, have to take it upon ourselves to seek out and to understand what is. I mean, we may want different things out of the political spectrum, but we still need it to come from good leaders.
Indeed.
Oh, heavy stuff. All right, Michael. Well, thank you very much. You know, let's check back in. I feel like we just scratched the surface of the story, but I think, you know, it might be helpful along the way if we are able to check in and just hear more.
That'd be great. And Scott, thank you for investing your time and talents in the show. It's beneficial for everyone.
Well, time. I think we're still looking. We're looking. We'll see if the kid has any talent, but definitely the time.
way too modest.
All right, Michael. Thank you very much. Have a great night, and we'll talk again soon.
My pleasure.
All right.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, big things. And speaking of leadership, I had a great opportunity to talk to Tom LaFlesh earlier today. He's a musician. If you have heard his music, you may have heard it under the name Hank Thomas. And then he's got a new music video that's out on YouTube. We're going to show it tonight, but it is definitely a bit of, I don't want to say it's an indictment of our leadership, but, you know, here we go. Hey, Tom, how are you, sir?
Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Good. How's it going?
We're doing all right over here. And, you know, I mean, well, there's that pandemic thing. And, you know, we're trying to observe all the guidelines, wearing masks, don't go out very often. You know, there's not a lot of protests in our area. We're way over in eastern Connecticut. Some of the bigger cities at the other end of the state, there's been a lot going on there. But it's pretty quiet here.
So how long have you been writing music?
Oh, that's a good question. And I started writing probably in 1974, so a couple of weeks ago. And I really picked it up again in about 2005. And I've written probably, I don't know, 120 songs since then.
And then how do you get into a new tune?
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it usually starts with the title. Although sometimes, I'll hear some music and just things just pop into my head. I get a lot of ideas, just I don't even know where they come from. I wake up in the morning and it's playing in my head, and wake up during the night and there's a song playing that I know nothing about.
And so how does all this come together? Like, is it people you know, connections?
Connections-wise, I've connected with an awful lot of other writers throughout the country and done a lot of collaborations with them. I worked with some really good producers out in Nashville who've done quite a few of my songs for me. Singers, from throughout the country through air gigs and, their own websites and stuff. People I heard, I'm like, boy, that would sound good on one of mine.
And so how did this song in particular come together?
This particular song, it basically is a follow-up to my song, Hard Times in America 2010, which dealt mostly with specifically with the financial crash. I and my family, like many other Americans, were severely affected by it. And that one was more questioning of what was going to happen, just kind of when is this going to happen type of stuff. And this one is far more pointed at our lack of leadership in this country right now.
Right.
And the things that somebody is doing to really not help.
Right. Right. And who are some of the musicians? Have you worked with these guys before?
Oh, well, the guys that are playing on Hard Times in America 2020 are I've run into along the way. The vocalist, Ron Wallace, I found him through one of my other producers. I heard Ron sing, and I said, can you get this guy? And he said, sure. And Ron has now been probably on, 12, 14 of my productions. Wow. And I trust his vocals and his abilities and his interpretations. I just say, do what you want.
Right.
And Jason, I heard through that same producer, I did a song, collaborated with a friend of mine, David Charles, and it needed a fiddle. And Martin Young, the producer, said, I always hired this guy. And his name is Jason Roller. And he did the fiddle on that, and I was just totally blown away by it. Him and Ron both put an awful lot of extra effort into it. Jason did extra tracks that I didn't even ask for, didn't charge me anything for them.
Wow.
And, as you'll hear, it's come out pretty good.
Cool song, for sure.
Well, thanks, Scott. Tell Kate and the boys and you, Barbara sends her love and hopes that everyone is well.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom. Give Babs a hug from Kate and I, and we'll talk to you soon.
Dear Mr. President, could you please drop another check in the mail to me? We're running low on groceries and the landlord wants the rent. We do everything our governor asks while you run around without a mask. Got a notice yesterday they're turning off the lights. Enough's enough. It's hard towns in America. Enough's enough. Hard towns in America. There's hard times in America these days. Enough's enough. time to achieve. There's hard times in America. Hard times in America. There's hard times in America these days. You got people living week to week, trying to find a way to make ends meet. There's hard times in America these days. These days. These days. Enough's enough. There's a haze that runs across this land. It's the burden of the working man. Your shameless lies go on and on while his mother's dying all alone. Can't go to church in his hometown while you go play another round. The unseen hand who guides us on says love thy neighbor as thyself. That's why I'm begging you, please. Well, Mr. President, could you tell my ma when my daddy's gonna be coming home? He walks a beat long 12-hour days. He does his part to keep us safe. It sure don't feel like the promised land, like you were dodging Vietnam. We got a never-ending funeral train in the name of liberty. Oh, there's hard times in America. Hard times in America. There's hard times in America these days. While people die out in the street, you sit on your golden throne and tweet. There's hard times in America these days. There's hard times in America. Hard times in America. There's hard times in America these days. These days. These days. Enough's enough.
Enough is enough is enough is enough. A great tune, you know? I mean, it's a great tune, but then, God, it's just so much suffering, you know? So much suffering. I just also wanted to, with this idea of National Youth Day and thinking about the kids. So Kate got a DVD we watched the other night about of the school in Alabama, and JFK gave a speech right after that incident. The speech is just a little snippet of it, but I thought it had a lot of resonance today.
Now the time has come for this nation to fulfill its promise. The events in Birmingham and elsewhere have so increased the cries for equality that no city or state or legislative body can prudently choose to ignore them. The fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city, north and south. Where legal remedies are not at hand, redress is sought in the streets, in demonstrations, parades, and protests, which create tensions and threaten violence and threaten lives. We face, therefore, a moral crisis as a country and a people. It cannot be met by repressive police action. It cannot be left to increase demonstrations in the streets. It cannot be quieted by token moves or talk. It is a time to act in the Congress, in your state and local legislative body, and above all, in all of our daily lives. It is not enough to pin the blame on others, to say this is a problem of one section of the country or another, or deplore the facts that we face. A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all. Those who do nothing are inviting shame as well as violence. Those who act boldly are recognizing right as well as reality.
Those who act boldly are recognizing right as well as reality. And I think that's one of the important things that Michael said was it didn't feel right, right? We know what our reality is, and now we have to act right. Thank you to Tom, Michael, and Lea for tonight, and thank you to you for tuning in. And on Thursday, we are going to have an amazing show. Emmett Tross, who you remember from last week, Justice for George Queens. He was one of the founders of Justice for George Queens. Emmett's going to be on, and he's going to sing a couple of songs, and we had a conversation, just kind of like a prelim conversation, and it's going to be amazing. And I have to go. Kate worked tonight at the hospital, and so I have to go. This may sound crazy to you. I don't know if it does or not, but I have to go downstairs and open the garage door so she can come in and decontaminate. So, have a great rest of your Tuesday evening. Hunker, hug, Haven. We'll see you on Thursday.